Hello and welcome to the 8th Listen and Learn podcast for Hospice of Central Ohio. My name is Liz Adamschick. I'm the manager of volunteer services here. And today we're going to be talking with Loretta Frenton and Jonah Carney, two members of our Handmade Items team, about the work that you do and how that benefits our patients. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to have you here. So, by way of introduction first, just a little bit of background. Tell me, each of you, a little bit about what drew you to want to volunteer with hospice and anything else you want to let our listeners know about who you are. Loretta, we'll start with you.
Well, my hospice helped out when both of my grandfathers passed away, and then later my uncle passed away, and then my daughter-in-law, Chanda Frenton, she's a volunteer. My Aunt Linda Prouty is a volunteer. And my cousin Sheila Everett is a nurse here. So I thought it's probably a good fit. And I just live up the road so I can drop the items off real quickly when I make them. So I think it's just a really good fit because of all of that. So,
wonderful.
And thanks to hospice for what they do.
Thank you very much. You've got quite the layered approach to that. You've got family and, it's kind of that connection there, but also you've got talents and skills that we'll talk about later. So what was it that made you pick up the phone, though, and say, I think I want to be part of this, but did you know what you wanted to do when you applied, or were you more exploring and then this opportunity presented itself? How did that come about?
Well, actually, Chanda had come from a meeting that you had with some of the other volunteers. Okay. And she said, Loretta, I just think that you should do this. When they had their first child, she asked me to make a quilt for her. Oh. And then shortly after that, she said, you need to do this. So, and I'm getting ready to make another one for them.
Very good. Wonderful, wonderful. Jonah, what about you? What drew you here? And
it's funny because it's total opposite. I've had no experience with hospice, situations with my parents. Hospice wasn't able to get involved. It was just too quick with some stuff, but it was just a chance meeting. Liz and I have known each other since kindergarten, and I think it was the passing of one of our parents. We kind of reconnected because we, with college and everything, kind of go your own separate ways and stuff, but we reconnected through that, and we went to lunch one day, and we were just catching up and everything, and, Liz explained what she was doing, and I, talked about my mom was a sewer, so I loved to sew, and then making the cakes and that kind of stuff, and she kind of introduced that they used to have somebody do cakes, but that kind of got away from it. So she said, is that something that you might be interested in doing? And I jumped all over the opportunity because I have volunteered for a long, long time, and I was at a situation where I haven't been doing it for a couple of years, and I was ready to go back in and start doing stuff. So the timing on that was great. So, right. Yeah. But I enjoyed doing it very much. I love the creativity of it, and I like the challenge of, what can I think of for ideas and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
wonderful.
So, yeah,
wonderful. And you've kind of, tipped our hat in a knowing way. We're not too proud to beg or go, hey, I know we have a history, but making invitations for people to be involved is something that we do all the time. And certainly, anybody here on the paid staff will tell you, yeah, I've invited my family to help out or my friends. And at the same time, about 90% of our volunteers come from their own hospice experience. So, Jonah, you are kind of in that different group of hey, which is also a curiosity. We could go on for days about that as to why people who have no hospice experience approach us. But no matter, the bottom line here is if you've got the desire and the skills, we want to get out of your way so that you can do good work. Say a little bit more about the kinds of things that you make, or the kinds of things you enjoy making, because I sew, I quilt. I'm just now learning to do clothing. I'm teaching myself, Jonah. I might be calling you, Loretta. But it's not my favorite. It's a little fussier. I'd prefer, so I'm sure you all have things that you prefer to make or enjoy making. Or if you could say a little bit about that.
I've kind of made a little bit of everything. I do a lot of the gowns. I've done the neck pillows. I was fortunate enough to kind of do the prototype for the busy blanket. And again, that's one of the things I enjoy doing just because of the putting the creative juices together and figure out, what works, especially when it's a situation where they're requesting certain things like themes and that kind of stuff of how I can fulfill, the requirements and that kind of stuff for the patient. And then, of course, the birthday cakes for the patients, again, just when it comes to themes, just what can I do to personalize it and make it unique for, this individual. Because I know I have an unusual name, Jonah, and I could never find anything, in the stores with my name on it and all that kind of stuff. So I just kind of revert back to that every now and again. I always get excited when I see something specifically for me that, was made for me, that kind of stuff, and I kind of like to turn around and give that back to the patients and that kind of stuff.
Loretta, what about you? What kinds of stuff do you enjoy making?
Well, I think when I first started, I was making a lot of the busy blankets.
Right.
And then I make gowns, and I've made lap quilts. I don't do any cooking. I don't know if they would like it or not.
No pressure then. No pressure.
But and I've made neck pillows, and but I didn't really want to try the gowns, and then I think there was a plea for some gowns, and so I did it, and now I kind of like doing them. I got it down to a science now, I think.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
wonderful.
But what I do enjoy is when you put out the special requests.
Okay.
Because I want to make sure that when I make something that the person that's using it knows that we thought of them. And so, so when there's special requests, like I think the last special request I did was a Elvis lap blanket. And,
okay.
I found some material on Etsy with the Elvis pictures all over it. So, but I just know those last moments of your, couple days, weeks, or hours are just, they need to feel like they are special people. And I do think everybody is special.
Absolutely. This seems like a good time to kind of back up a little bit and do the big picture for our listeners who may not know. We've dived right in because we also, we're just a bunch of folks getting together. What do you have and how's your fabric stash? But to kind of back up a little bit and talk in broad terms about the value and how the Handmade Items program kind of came to be. Certainly in end-of-life care, we want to make that experience the best it can possibly be. And at times, patients are going to need things that can't really be purchased quickly, or for whom a special touch, a unique handmade approach would be wonderful. It's also very significant when it comes to helping them relieve their pain in a non-narcotic way. So if it's something as simple as a neck pillow that we can provide, and we have a couple of shapes on that, but would help a patient reposition himself or be able to sleep on his side instead of on his back, and those items that we make help them do that without the use of drugs. I think that's significant. We can talk about that more in depth if you like, but we have kind of a menu of items that are pretty standard. Gowns, neck pillows, lap afghans, lap quilts we've made. We have something called a hand grip, which is just a really small kidney-shaped stuffed piece of fabric with a bit of elastic on it. And if we have patients that are struggling with what we call contractures, or maybe their hands are curled into a permanent fist, we're able to gently open up their hand, insert that hand grip so that they have something to grab onto that doesn't allow their fingernails to dig into the palms of their hands. Simple things that maybe people, and even before I started working for hospice, had no idea were going to be beneficial. And so here you are as volunteers coming in, and this is what we do and this is what we provide. So the Handmade Items team is really this intersection of comfort and beauty. And this is what you provide for people. And so the busy blankets are fairly new. I think in the last couple of years we started adding those. Those are really designed for people who probably struggling with some sort of cognitive decline or dementia and need a way to keep their hands busy so that they don't experience that increased agitation. And so imagine, and this is for our listeners, imagine a fairly 18-inch by 18-inch square of fabric that's quilted with items that have been sewn onto it that they can interact with, that have some sort of tactile function, or a zipper that they can, close and open constantly. That may seem, for those of us who aren't struggling with dementia, challenging, or hey, I don't get that, but when you need something to do with your hands. And so those things have evolved as well. And then custom made gowns. We had one pattern that was not a one-size-fits-all, but we had one pattern. And what we've seen over the years is people saying, wow, this one's too big. Can you make a smaller one, or can you make one that's a bit larger, because she would be more comfortable if she had a little more room to move around. So those are the kinds of things that we offer to our patients. And I would love to hear from you for those requests. And you had mentioned the Elvis, and I actually have that Elvis fabric. I saw a picture of what you made. I have that fabric. If I had known, I would have. Yes, I would have. It's in my stash somewhere. We should tell our listeners, if you don't so, every person who sews has a stash, we're just going to say. And it's probably bordering on a problem or an addiction, but we're getting help, I think. But to be able to make things by request, that it isn't just, hey, come in here and hope you find something, that we're able to put requests out to you from the clinical team that says, we've got somebody who would like this particular kind of busy blanket or this particular kind of quilt. And I'm wondering if you could share a little more about maybe some of the unique requests that you've received, or if there's anything that you've been happy to help us troubleshoot with regard to requests. I know Jonah's nodding, so.
I remember it's probably been a couple years ago, but and hospice said it was the first request, but a patient was a little bit on the larger side, and she wanted a hospital gown for herself, but then she also requested a gown be made for her staff member who was there with her and stuff. So I made basically a pair of matching hospital gowns for the patient and nurse and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that was fun to do. So and I always look at it like the final thing is just like what my mom or dad had been presented this, the quality wise, just want to make sure that if you're making this for a family member, you want to make it for the same quality and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there was a request for a busy blanket for an artist, and so my mom was an artist, so it kind of set home. So I made one, but I cut a little palette out and put different colors on there, and then I couldn't find a brush anywhere, so I made a little brush out of material, and I hope they liked it.
Nice.
Right.
And and then another request was they wanted a crinkly book, and I thought, oh my, and it was like I needed to do it real quick.
Sure.
And I was like, well, where am I going to find a crinkly book? So I went to different stores trying to find, and I couldn't find any. So I looked it up, I Googled it, and if you have any baby wipes, just take those packages and cut, and then put material over it, and then you might have a crinkly page. So I was able to do that. So my daughter-in-law's been saving all the baby wipe packages for me now.
Very nice. Thank you, Chanda, for doing that. And as I listen to you talk, I think it could be intimidating for people in the community who say, oh, I'm not creative. And I can go off in a whole different direction on how I would gently and lovingly not accept that from anybody. We're all creative. That's my approach. But we don't know what we need to do until we're in the situation where, hey, you've got a request. You wouldn't just think, okay, I'm going to make 6 busy blankets. One's going to be for an artist. One's going to be for a retired Marine. We don't think that way. It's usually the clinical team member will identify a need. Somebody wants this. Can we make this? We have made oxygen tank cases. We've made catheter bag covers that have been customized. We have made eye patches for people whose disease progression has led them to feel incredibly self-conscious about their appearance, and so let's make an eye patch for somebody so that he can feel comfortable being in the same room with his visitors and not wondering if they're comfortable with him, etc. So there's all that kind of aspect to it, but I think that's the soul of hospice care. It's rooted in creativity.
Right.
And I think when people hear creative, they automatically think arts and crafts, which is kind of the world that the three of us live in our spare time, whatever that is. And at the same time, there are creative ways to approach anyone's plan of care. And what you and the rest of the Handmade Items team provide is that opportunity for people to think outside what can appear to be a very small box when it comes to, here's a list of medical supplies, but what she needs is outside that box. Can you help us out? And, there are some requests I'm sure that we've had to scratch our heads and go, would we even ask you to do that? One thing I know that we haven't really approached the Handmade Items team with yet, but we could, is making items for family members out of their loved one's clothing after that loved one has passed. We have a wonderful volunteer, Bonnie, who makes teddy bears for patients' families. And there are times when she knows that might not be the most appropriate or desired item. If you have a college student who may not be into teddy bears but would like a pillow, or if you've got somebody and we've had special requests for her to make just a folded handkerchief that somebody can keep in his pocket with, a note on it or the person's name. And so I'm wondering, as you imagine that, would that be something, at the risk of putting you on the spot, that you'd be open to doing should it present itself?
Oh, sure. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I'm recruiting now for a new job, but how does that, and why would that appeal to you? Because that's a little different than making a stash of neck pillows. We're actually looking at cutting up a beloved one's shirt, and that can seem intimidating. So I wonder if you could say a little bit about that prospect.
Well, I just know from my personal, when we were, cleaning out parents' house, I had to leave, and when I left, they found out that they donated all of the clothes in the closet, and I so much wanted to be able to do that,
Right.
and I wasn't able to do that. So for me, there's kind of a little bit of personal agenda with it, but
Sure.
I would, since I missed out on that opportunity, I know that would be something that would be absolutely wonderful to be able to give to somebody else. Yeah.
Right.
My mom passed away, it was 3 years ago this May, and my mom and I were really close, even though she lived away, and then she moved back here. I was here for 92 days and passed away. But I have, for her 63rd birthday, it was, as a joke, I bought her a house dress. It was so awesome because it was only $3.
Right.
But
Right.
I still have it, and I still put it on to remind me of my mother. So
Right.
if someone would request something to take that piece of clothing and make it into something that they could hug or sleep
Sure.
with, then absolutely that would. I because I understand, as you had mentioned.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
good to have.
Yes, yes, no, it's all good, yeah. I
It
fortunately
is.
have other stuff, but that
Yes.
just would have been just one other thing that was a little bit more
Right.
practical to
Yeah.
have on your bed with your pillow at night or something like that, yeah. But
Exactly.
but yeah, absolutely to be able to provide that with somebody else would be awesome, yeah.
And I had a great aunt just pass away, and my cousin came over, and bless her heart, she gave me one of her hankies. We know those hankies.
Yes.
Exactly. I think it's probably not surprising to anybody who's volunteering for hospice or involved in some way that the ways that we help relieve pain aren't always through medications. We're certainly, glad to be able to offer that option when patients need it, but we're looking at maybe easing someone's grieving process a little bit with those things. Or, my dad was in the program, and there's a difference between seeing your family member in a standard hospital-issued gown, which isn't quite as attractive, as opposed to Dad was a fisherman, or Dad liked bowling, and we were able to find fabric that kind of captured that pastime for him. And so I walk into the room, and now I see him wearing that, and he and I could start a conversation by pointing to some of the designs on the fabric. I don't know that everybody understands just how powerful that can be for a family member. And so I think of all of the items that we have, our gowns are the ones that we can't keep in stock. And we know that our aides will take a couple, because as people are wearing these, if that's what they're wearing throughout the day, they're going to need one to wash, a couple to wear in that regard. So we will always take gowns. And I know last year we opened up a campaign to the community to invite them to donate certain items, and we had given them a list and some specifications, but we would take handmade gowns using our pattern, because we've tested it and we've run it through, and it's easy to follow. But powerful stuff like that, or a neck pillow that looks like it's just that little bit of color that can be inserted into an environment where things can be pretty consistent, or I don't want to say drab, but they can be drab.
Yeah.
There it is.
And it's also it's really nice when there's special requests, because you know that John was a fisherman, or he was an accountant, or he was in the service, so that you can pick out material and fabrics that meet that, so that hopefully when he puts it on, it's like, this person who made this knew that you did this, so this is why they made it.
And you're right, it tends to be a little bit easier when you have an idea, because sometimes, as with gowns, speaking of, male versus female material, and trying to find something that you think could be unisex can sometimes be a little bit tricky. So if you know specifically, that it does make things a little bit easier trying to find fabric for a specific theme and that kind of stuff, yeah.
And see, when I make gowns, I try to do 4, 2 women, 2 men,
There you go.
or unisex.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
Because in that way, I don't know for sure who's going to get this, but
It's funny, when I'm at Joanne's up at the fabric counter, I'm like, do you think this could pass as a unisex material? And they're like, yeah, I think that would work, but yeah.
They say you're with hospice, aren't you? Yes, I'm with hospice, as you can tell.
Yeah.
Which is always, and I think when you go to do that, it's probably, the conversations are probably pretty normal. Like, what are you making? And how does that go for you? I mean, how do you let folks know that what you're doing, if the opportunity presents itself, that, I'm buying this because I'm a volunteer with hospice? Does it ever go there?
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
And
yes.
what's the reaction?
Well, we get bless your heart, and all that is very nice that you do that. But I kind of do it hoping that if they sew, maybe they would want to do it.
Oh.
I've tried to. I've got a couple of friends who are sewers too, and I try to nudge them. I'm like, you know what, we could really use. And so far, I haven't gotten any bites, but I'm still going to try plugging away. Yeah,
It's hard to recruit, isn't it? Good. I'm glad it's not just me.
But you would also take donations of materials at any point in time, like 3.5 yards of some material.
I think, and that's a good question, which is an opportunity to talk a little bit about how that part works. We live in a very generous community, and we cover 9 counties, and so if you can imagine all the people sewing, and so just in your mind's eye, try to imagine all the people that have that skill and ability, and to encourage them to consider that. You know, if I could get a gown a week from 2 people and, you know, just do the math, it makes sense. But we have some storage challenges here, so we're careful about how we solicit donations of items, but we're certainly open to that, and it's not unusual, and I'm sure you folks have heard this, where we hear from the family member of a person in our program who passed away, who was a crafter, who was a sewing person. Hey, my wife would love to, or my husband would love to donate all of the fabric that he has. And so we're open to talking to folks about that and seeing what we can do, but it's kind of hard at the moment to just wholesale open it up. So we carefully choose that, but we wouldn't automatically say absolutely not, we don't take donations. We would want to talk to somebody and let them know. And I know that we ask the Handmade Items team, please call first before you bring things, because we do have limited storage, but at least for the gowns you never have to call. If that's what you've got, just bring them, and we'll be fine with that. We will be fine with that. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, I have a few more questions about maybe going a little bit deeper into the difference that you both make on the Handmade Items team. And then I want to talk, Jonah, a little bit, if we could, about some of the cakes. I think that might be a part of volunteering that folks may not realize, you know, is available to them. So when we come back with Loretta Frenton and Jonah Carney, we're going to talk a little bit more about the difference that they make. This is the Listen and Learn podcast with Hospice of Central Ohio Volunteer Services. Are you looking to add meaning and purpose in your life? Why not consider joining the Hospice of Central Ohio team in one of our many volunteer positions? From visiting patients to staffing events and providing handmade items of comfort and beauty, our volunteer team members are essential to the care we give to each and every patient and family. To learn more about the opportunities that await you, please visit the volunteers page on our website at www.hospiceofcentralohio.org. You can also call volunteer services at 740-788-1404. We'll work with you to find the right fit and bring that meaning and purpose to your life and the lives of the people in our care. Hospice of Central Ohio Volunteers, building trust, providing comfort since 1982. Welcome back for the second half of our Listen and Learn podcast, where we're focusing on our Handmade Items program, where we bring comfort and beauty to the people in our program at end of life and to their loved ones. So we are here with Loretta Frenton and Jonah Carney, 2 members of our Handmade Items team. Thank you so much again for spending time with us and talking a little bit more about this particular role for volunteer staff. Where did you come by your crafting skills? I'm always curious as to how people come by that. Were you self-taught, or did someone teach you, or was it a combination? How did that look?
My mom. There were 5 of us growing up, and so, ever since I can remember, Mom had a sewing machine, and when I was in 6th grade, she said, "Here, Loretta, here's some material, and I want you to make all your clothes for your..." So I did.
Wow.
I don't know if anybody else enjoyed them, but I was very proud.
Yes.
Fair enough.
And then, as far as quilting, my husband had a bunch of jeans, and he just never wants to get rid of anything. So I said, "Why don't you go through your jeans, pick out the ones you want, and I will make lap quilts for all the kids for Christmas out of your jeans."
Wow.
So, using
Nice.
jean material to make a quilt, you learn a lot. You blow up a sewing machine,
Yeah.
and then you learn what kind to buy.
Very good. Very good.
Mom was a seamstress, so I learned sewing from her. As far as the cakes, that was kind of self-taught. I was just
Okay.
Fortunate enough that I could kind of figure stuff out, and I think that's one of my strong suits. I think is I can think outside of the box and try and figure out a way to get something done if there's not like instructions to do it right there in front of you kind of thing. So so a little bit of both. Mom taught me sewing, and I kind of did the cake decorating stuff on my own.
Right.
But I like the way that you mentioned earlier that you want to know about the patient so you can make it individualized to them, because that is so important.
Yes.
Especially when your birthday is your only day of the year that's really just yours.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's funny because with the specifics, and we might be jumping ahead, but with the cakes, and we can come back to it if you want. But,
No, that's fine.
I generally get female, like white cake, likes flowers. But one time, it was a gentleman, John Deere tractor, mowing the lawn on a sunny day. I'm like, you can't get any more specific than that. So, but that was one of my funnest cakes that I did because I knew exactly.
You knew.
Yeah. So, and Pinterest is a wonderful thing, getting on there just to get some ideas, and then you just
Sure.
kind of put it together yourself on how to do your own thing. So,
So you got all three of that together.
I did,
Because
yeah.
you had the information.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Do you prefer more detail or less detail when it comes to special requests?
More.
More detail, okay. And as opposed to, just give me the general idea. If you don't care how I get there, then I can go ahead and come up with something. But
Well, I know I asked Kristen because I was buying a lot of flannel no matter what time of year for the
Right.
gowns, because I had a friend who had an accident and she was always cold. And so I got to thinking about it. Kristen and I were talking one day, and I said, well, find out if you wouldn't mind. So she said that the women prefer the flannel because women tend to be colder than the men, and the men prefer the cotton. So I've been trying to do that, though there's some really pretty cotton fabric for women as well.
And I just learned that because I was not aware of that. So I'm taking something back myself from this
Very
podcast
good.
about what we need to do. So yeah, so nice. So I
It
was
is-
not aware of that.
the cakes that you make are usually for birthdays. I don't know if you've ever had a request for anniversary cakes, but our clinical team will know when their patients' birthdays are. And it's not always appropriate for a cake to be made for a patient because maybe he or she can't eat or swallow, or there could be all kinds of reasons why that wouldn't happen. But when they do, the requests come in pretty steadily. And it's a lovely service that we're thrilled you're providing, but you are the only one. As we tell our listening audience, we only have one person making cakes for patients. Would you want some extra help? Would it be nice to have a couple of volunteers? I know I think it'd be helpful for the other satellite offices or the other teams where we have that. But
Extra help is always welcome on stuff, but I honestly don't mind. It's just sometimes I think one couple months ago I had 3 within the month, so that can be kind of taxed, like scheduling my time and that kind of stuff, because I'm not always good with that. I'm just kind of a wing it kind of person sometimes, but with the
Sure.
cakes I have to make sure that I, because I bake the cake one day and then do that, so I have a system for that kind of thing. So, but I just, and it's funny, for the men, more detail is better, because I
Okay.
can kind of get an idea of what a female cake would be for, but for a guy, it might be, I have a little bit harder time trying to figure out, okay, what would a gentleman like to have, just a generic cake decoration. So in that regard, sometimes more details for the guys are better. So
Well, yes, because there's golf, and some people don't like golf.
Exactly.
There's fishing, and some
Yeah.
people don't like fishing.
Yeah.
And
Right.
there's all kinds of mowing.
yes,
Some people love mowing.
yeah.
So
My husband's one of those. He loves outside. Yeah, But,
exactly.
yeah.
And I think that's, it just hits home again, this whole personalized end-of-life experience that we're trying to provide for people, right down to something as simple as remembering that somebody's having a birthday. And I know that you take pictures of all the cakes that you make, so making those available on our Facebook page, if HIPAA allows us to do that, would be lovely, so that people can see what we're able to do. And when I say we, it's because you've joined the team. And so prior to that, we've had other cake bakers doing all kinds of different things. We've had in the past, maybe a recognition for one of our veterans, and a cake seemed appropriate so that we can provide that sort of celebration as well. And I think those things are, easy enough to do. But what it makes me think about is, I imagine, and we bump into this quite a lot on the recruiting side, or inviting people to join us as a volunteer, that I think the immediate impression is, oh, I could never be bedside. I could never do that. So I'm not going to volunteer for hospice because it's too sad, or that's just something I couldn't do. And so as you imagined, volunteering with hospice, when did you realize that there were so many other things you could do besides be bedside? And how do you feel about that decision? Because it's definitely one that we don't make for you. We let all of our applicants tell us. We don't push them into, oh, you have to do patient care. We know that there's a lot of ways to support folk. But how do you feel about your role as, a member of the Handmade Items team, making things for people that you will never meet, perhaps, or probably won't meet, that you know about, unless you happen to pass in the grocery store, like, oh, I think I know her. How does that feel?
Well, I like being on the Handmade team just because I can do it as my time allows.
Right.
I help out with some of my grandkids, and so sometimes it's not conducive. I have some friends that have health issues, and I help them.
Right.
And so I want to be available to my friends and family, but I also want, because I really enjoy doing that. So it's the perfect fit for me in that manner. I want to mention something.
Please.
All the materials and everything that you purchase, you get reimbursed for. Mm-hmm. So if a volunteer is saying, oh, but I don't know if I could do that, we get reimbursed. And you're very good about, when I turn a receipt in, I get it turned around within 2 or 3 weeks. So I appreciate that, because I wait till I get that check to go buy more material. So
sure.
Recycle. But that's something I enjoy, and I appreciate it.
Wonderful. So. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad you did. What's it like to make things for people that you may never encounter? And how does that keep the work meaningful for you, knowing that if you don't feel your skills are in the direction of bedside, and I don't know that I would choose that if I had the opportunity to volunteer. I'd probably be right along with you guys making things. And what's that like?
I think it's a wonderful thing, just because I feel like I'm a little special, like fairy godmother or some kind of thing that behind the scenes that just even though everybody else might not be aware of it, I know in my heart that that I was there able to touch somebody and that kind of stuff. And I just several years ago through church, time, talent, treasure, and I know I've got the time and the talent to be able to give back, and it's not always necessarily, you don't have to be a hands-on kind of thing. So so behind the scenes can be just as important as on the spot kind of thing. So yeah.
I agree with you on that, because I like doing things for people that people don't necessarily know that I'm doing.
Right.
And I can just sit there and smile and know that I've done something to help somebody, and no one really needs to know about it but me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is a wonderful point. I think people volunteer for a lot of different reasons, and they come with a lot of different ideas, and we welcome all of that interest. And at the same time, where we see some hesitation, I try to be really quick to remind folk that here's this buffet of opportunities waiting for you to be involved and to somehow have some touch with the work that we do without it putting you in a place where you're uncomfortable or you're unhappy. And I wouldn't want any of our volunteers to feel like they're obligated to do something outside their skill set, but I will listen to you and let you tell me what it is that you want to do. And I think this is one of those unique, oh, I didn't realize you guys provided handmade items for people. What kinds of things do you do? And so when we launched our campaign to accept donations of certain handmade items for our patients, we were really clear about what we were looking for. And for our listeners, what we invited the community to participate in was providing lap quilts, gowns, neck pillows. We would provide all the patterns, and we were very clear about the quality that we were looking for. And I think this is probably the time to talk about quality. I'm certainly not good at everything that I put my hands to, and so I don't know that I would offer to make a shirt saver, for example, which is really, a terry cloth towel that's got a neck hole cut that someone can wear to protect his clothing while he's eating, and provide that level of dignity during mealtime. And so I don't know that I would do that, because that's probably not, for me, as practiced a skill as something like quilts. I would do quilts, and I would do them really well, but we were very specific about the guidelines and the requirements. And so, for example, all the laundry or all the items that we get have to be pre-laundered with unscented detergent, no fabric softener smells, because some of our patients are very sensitive to that. Free of pet hair, free of smoke. And I would think you wouldn't have to say this, but sometimes it's interesting to see what, folk would provide. We've been very fortunate that our community embraces those standards of quality because they know that this is going to go to somebody, and our job is not to make them uncomfortable, it's to make them more comfortable. So we want to provide items that are, of a high quality. And I wonder how that factors into the way that you make things when you're trying something new. If you're going to make something that you haven't done before, how do you make sure that it's of the highest quality, and how do you match your standards with ours?
The seam ripper is a wonderful thing.
Amen.
Several times when I'm doing something the first time, the seam ripper is used a lot until I get it down and figure it
Sure.
out. So the first one on something new takes the longest just because you're figuring it out. But
Right.
once you have, I think, got something figured out, then it gets much easier along the way for this stuff to follow.
Ditto.
Because I think folks see the finished product, and if they don't sew, I think the assumption is, oh, you guys can just whip this stuff out, not realizing how long it takes in your little test kitchens and test sewing rooms to perfect something.
Well, especially the busy blankets too, because
Right.
like I don't want to do the same thing over and over again, though I have.
Sure.
But I like when I'm making gowns, I keep the extra binding, and then that's where I make the little loopies on the little squares. I use my when the spool is out of thread, I use it on a piece of material
Yeah.
that they can move it around if they need to. But
Wonderful.
I try really hard to, once I'm done with it, I go over everything and cut off any threads I missed.
Wonderful.
And I try not to use straight pins because those can be left, so I use quilt clips.
Excellent.
But
Excellent.
yeah, there's sometimes when you have to use pins, but I always count them.
You learn to be very resourceful because you figure hospice is paying you back for this fabric that you purchased. You
Right.
want to use every single piece of it that you possibly can, and
Wonderful.
as much scrap as possible. So when I first started making the gowns, I would go out and buy the bias tape, and it's just realized I can make my own bias tape just from the leftover fabric and that kind of stuff, and then just finding out, make squares to sew together to end up being a lap blanket or
Right.
something like that. So you learn to be very resourceful with. I've saved up little stuff to use for the busy blankets too. So it's funny that you mentioned that because just save everything that you can and find a way to repurpose it is
Exactly.
a lot of stuff too. Is repurposing stuff. Yeah.
With the binding, I make the binding for the sleeves because then I only have to buy 2 packs instead of 3.
What you're hearing, listeners, is what we love about our Handmade Items team. Perhaps the most budget-conscious group I've ever worked with. And we can use the word frugal, we can use the word thrifty. I think it all says the same thing. We are looking at a group of people who are responsible stewards of the donor dollar. And I think our donors would appreciate that as well, knowing that when it comes to making these items, it doesn't always have to be virgin materials. It can be, let's imagine that we're going to repurpose some things, but everything comes in clean, everything comes in ready to go, and our storage system is very organized so that the clinical team can get what they need. But I appreciate that you folks are willing to look at that. Some of our handmade items team members choose not to be reimbursed because they want to make that their donation. So we're grateful for all of that and how that comes around. On occasion, we will have family members offer to give back the things that we've donated to them. And we let them know that those are theirs to keep. And I think we can delicately address an infection control issue there in terms of our other families' comfort zones. I want to make sure that we honor that. And at the same time, some families are going to want to hang on to an item that their loved one touched for the last time. Have either of you made something called comfort squares, where it's just a quilted square of fabric that we provide? Okay, this is probably then a good time to talk about that. I inherited this when I came here 10 years ago, but the concept is you have just like a 9-inch quilt square, completely finished, that someone can leave on his or her pillow. And the idea is that when you go to sleep at night or when you're needing to rest, you just place symbolically your cares and your concerns on this square so that it can let you sleep. And we have a tag that we have on it that's just a little bit of poetry to encourage them to do that. And it's a lovely item, and those are things that we have found over the years family members really treasured because it was their way of, having something, maybe not made out of their father's clothing, but that was something that was on Dad's pillow when he passed. And so I will take all those cares and concerns. It's quite beautiful. And now we have found that, when we have those, if we have a need for a quick busy blanket, we can stitch those together and have that be the base for then what we add on to. But I wonder if there's any other items that you've imagined that you think might be of comfort or help to our patients. You were at a meeting recently, Jonah, I think, where the Handmade Items team, some of them got together, and maybe you got to hear from paid staff about what would be helpful, and I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to share about that.
That's the wonderful thing. They're pretty much open to at least maybe trying anything. I know we had somebody drop off a bunch of yarn, so I asked about like knitting or knitting like just a little shawl or something, and they were like, "Oh, that would be great." So just I think that's one thing is hospice is willing to try anything. It might work, it might not work, but not very many things do we say, no, we don't want to do that. There's always at least an open discussion about the possibility of doing stuff. But they talked about how much, very much appreciative of the family members are of the things that we do and the things that we make for their family members, which was nice to hear. And you kind of always assume, but it's kind of nice to get that little bit of feedback from from people as far as how things went and everything. But so they loved the idea about seasonal stuff. I know specifically they said Christmas fabric. So and that's one thing that I used to do when seasonal fabric is 70% off or whatever. Just go and pick up a stuff and just save it and use that to make gowns and that kind of stuff for the following holiday or whatever. So but just it was just nice to hear the positive feedback of what the Homemade Items team is doing for their patients and stuff. So
wonderful. Oh, that's good to hear.
The only comment I have on that line is alternative use for the neck pillows.
Oh,
I think I had mentioned
sure.
to you one day when I stopped in that a friend of mine fell, and she uses a neck pillow to keep her body up on one side so it helps her not prevent from getting bed sores.
Oh, wonderful.
And she said, you need to let them know there.
Okay.
She goes, because it really works, and she's continuing to do that. So,
and then just one thing, just in general too, one thing that's I'm always worried about. Am I going to have time if I get a request for something? And it's okay to say no if you've got other stuff on your calendar, family, work, whatever. So they don't get upset when you say no because they understand that this is volunteer work and that you have a life outside of this kind of stuff. So so don't feel obligated. Some of us put a lot of time into it, but I'm just a lot or little is just very much appreciated, I'm sure. So, but it's if you have a request, and a couple times I've had to say no to cakes just because of different things that I have going on. And the first time I was just like, oh, they're not going to ask me to do that again. But yeah, but it's all good. Yeah, it's all good. So
That's
exactly.
good to hear.
I said no to the first special request because I didn't have time, and she goes, just that's okay. Just thank you so much for letting me know.
Right.
So,
And thank you for that, because you're not this little sweatshop that's located off campus. That isn't the image we want to give our listeners at all. It really is voluntary, and at the same time, we know that you have skills that so many of us here don't have. And it makes us wonder, oh, well, here, you guys can just do that. And so here's this, again, presumption that you folks are little wizards and all we have to do is say, here, make this, and you'll go off and do it. So yes, the need for detail in a request is helpful, but to know that, we do know you have lives, and we're glad that you live them, because that's what supports you in the work that you do. So what you can do, we're grateful for. What you can't do, there is a plan B, we will find that, or a plan C, or a plan D. So that's just, again, the creativity continues, and this is one expression of it, versus all the other ways that we creatively come together as a team to provide somebody the best end-of-life experience we can possibly support in that regard. So we're grateful for that. As we wrap up, I'm wondering, what would you want the community to know about this aspect of the support that we provide? whether it's somebody who wants to donate, somebody who wants to volunteer, what message would you want them to have from where you're sitting about why this is important, or what encouragement would you want to give people to support this part of what we do?
I just know how important hospice has been to family members and friends, and it's made their end of life so much better. And why would you not want to be a part of that, even if it's just one small way, whether you want to donate items or volunteer. And by goodness, if you can do bedside help, then by all means do that. I
Right.
would cry too much, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I hope by what I'm doing, it's a little bit helping that patient to transition, and for the family to understand how much someone who doesn't even know them still cares.
Wonderful.
And again, since my parents, but my dad was in a nursing home for 4 years, so I did get to see, to some degree, the place that he was in. You know, the staff who took care of him were wonderful, and so I imagine it's kind of the same kind of thing, and it just makes you feel good, warm, fuzzy, for lack of a better term, kind of cliche, but just knowing that you are bringing a little bit more peace and enjoyment and just family bonding and that kind of stuff for the end of life process. So yeah, it just, for me, it's just a very satisfying feeling of knowing that I have, in one way or another, kind of helped maybe calm some fears or just brought some peace to the family, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
And since our time doesn't allow us to do something on a schedule, then we can still contribute.
Right.
That's why.
Yeah. And it's nice knowing that sometimes the stuff that we make, we don't know where it's going to go because it's a generic situation, but the special request, you know specifically that you're making this for a specific individual. So there's kind of a happy mix between the two things about, knowing that you are specifically making something for a certain individual, and you put a lot more, just again thinking, would my loved one appreciate this, and as far as the standard of quality and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I actually made 3 gowns for a gentleman, and he was a retailer and a veteran, and he liked to watch the Food Network.
Wow.
So, and it was a real short period of time trying to find the material. So I was able to find some, and I actually got a thank you letter from the aide. So I was so happy to get the feedback, because I always wondered, okay, were my choices good enough? I mean, did they make them happy? So knowing that, yes, you made the right choices in the
Right.
fabric, because you had just this little period of time, that's helpful too.
I've got some thank you cards too, and I admit I get a little teary-eyed when I get them back.
Yes.
Just thinking that I'm going to start crying now. But yeah.
We have Kleenex, but hospice always has
but
Kleenex.
it's nice to know that
You made the right choice.
that you made the right choice, and that you touched somebody enough for them to give you feedback on it. Yeah.
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 Because you want to make sure, and if you made a mistake, then you want to know that too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we've ever communicated, hey, this was horrible. I mean,
Well,
I don't.
but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I mean, like
if you.
okay, John was a golfer, not a fisherman, or you know what I
Right.
mean.
Right.
Recently, I had a special request for something, and it came back, and was trying to figure out, what the dimensions were, and so I submitted something, and it wasn't right. So I got the stuff when I redid it, and that was no big deal, because at least I knew
Sure.
I want to
Absolutely.
give something that they're going to use, and not just have it, either be thrown away or sitting on the nightstand or whatever, and not used and stuff. So I did
Right.
not have a problem with that at all. So
Yes, much rather that.
yeah.
And that's the beauty of what you both bring and what all of the Handmade Items team bring. It's heartening to hear you feel that you are part of the team. And that's what we want all of our volunteer staff to walk away with, is the sense that I'm not some second-hand citizen, or I'm not some, nice to have add-on, but I'm integral to the team. You are integral to our patients' comfort and to their quality of life and to their dignity at end of life when they have the support structures in place that they need, from the medications to the visits to how they feel physically and comfortably in their own clothing, literally. So to know that you provide that, and to know that we've had a chance to share with the community today the value that you bring and that this service provides is powerful. So I'm grateful to both of you for doing that.
That's what every now and again when I'm here dropping stuff off, I'll come into a paid stuff. You know, oh, you're the one who does the cakes, or you're the one. So it's so good to put a face to a, that kind of stuff. So that's very nice.
Wonderful. I don't think the phrase behind the scenes ever will capture what our volunteers who aren't bedside do, and knowing how much we need all of that. Every single player has something to do here. So I am sure that we have sparked interest in our listeners about our Handmade Items program. So I want to say a few things about that piece of it. Certainly, we welcome donations of certain items. If you have questions about what those items are, we would ask that you call Volunteer Services at 788-1404. That's area code 740. We would be happy to send you information about the different items that we're looking for. We provide the patterns, and so we ask that you use those patterns. So we want to make it clear to our listeners that this is not a general all call for anything that you have. We're very careful, again, about storage, but we're also careful about the items that are going to eventually physically touch our patient's skin. We have to watch for that, but we are happy to guide you through what our requirements are and then provide you with the patterns so that you can go off and make the items that we need. If you would like to become a volunteer in this role, we certainly have opportunities coming up in trainings, and again, that 740-788-1404 number would be the one to call to learn more about how you can join our Handmade Items team as a volunteer. So thank you very much for listening to this Listen and Learn podcast. If you have any questions, we're happy to help get you on board as a volunteer. Jonah and Loretta, thank you so much for not just your time this morning talking with us, but for walking back into your craft rooms after this and helping with our special requests, helping with everything that will bring both comfort and beauty to our people at end of life.
Thanks
Thank you so
for
much.